Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little. I hope you're having a fantastic day. And today, we're going to be discussing 3 key exploits to use in small stakes cash games. I realize that is a situation that a lot of you often find yourselves in. I mean, small stakes cash games are a great way to grow a bankroll. I actually talked about that just this morning in my show, A Little Coffee, about how to turn a small amount of money into something like a $100,000 bankroll and how to make $100,000 a year just grinding out 2-5. And today, I'm going to give you 3 key exploits that you can use in those games to take advantage of your opponents. So, first things first, to exploit your opponents, you have to pay attention. So many players think in their minds, I'm just going to play some default strategy and everything's going to work itself out. And this is what a lot of small stakes players do. And to be fair, you may be able to win at the smallest stakes just by playing tight-ish, aggressive-ish poker because many of your opponents are playing horribly. If your opponents are playing horribly, well, just play better cards than them and you'll win a small amount, but that will not work as you move up in stakes. So don't focus on just the hands you play. You need to take note of all of the hands that are being played. Get off your phone. Don't read a book. Don't be betting on sports or sweating out a sports game because it's your favorite team. Realize that if you want to be playing poker, well, play poker and don't be focusing on other things. I mean, think about it, right? Like how many doctors are doing surgery while also watching a football game? Doesn't make logical sense, right? Now, obviously, poker playing is not like being a doctor, but you get what I'm saying, right? You need to make sure if you are actually taking poker seriously that you're not just there goofing off. So, in this webinar, you're going to learn 3 exploitative plays to use in the small stakes games, which are how to exploitively 3-bet, also how to exploitively overbet, and then also general exploitative river strategies. And also I'm going to be telling you which things you need to be looking at and traits you want to be looking for when you're looking to exploit your opponents. So first things first, we're just going to look at a hand. This is just the hand we observed, right? We're not even playing this hand. Our hand doesn't matter because it goes raise 3-bet, we fold, right? And then this hand goes down. $10 raise at 1-3, re-raise to 35, call, check, bet, call, check, 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 and Jack 8 of diamonds wins. This hand takes place all the time. It happens often, right? But now, you want to be sitting here thinking, what can I learn from this situation? If you're here watching live, type it in the chat box. What do you think you should learn from this information? What exploit should we be making against the player in the hijack seat? Well, first things first is the hijack calls 3-bets way too wide, right? Seems like a lot of you in the chat are focusing on the cutoff that he 3-bets too wide. Well, I mean, he could easily have ace, king, or ace, queen, right? He could easily have pocket 9s. There's no reason to think that he did anything wrong in this hand because we really didn't learn anything about that player. What we can learn, though, very clearly from the hand, again, let's go back to the beginning of the hand, is that this player raised to $10 with Jack 8 suited, which is a little bit too loose to begin with, and then he called a $35 re-raise, a relatively big re-raise, right? And that is very, very important. So he check called top pair, which is fine. Check, check, turn, check, check, river. I think he actually played post-flop fine. Really what you can learn from this, though, is that he raises perhaps a little bit too wide, and he calls 3-bets a little bit too wide, right? That is not necessarily perfectly clear information, but it is pretty nice, right? I mean, I think it is reasonably accurate, and I think you're going to see that type of thing happen over and over and over again, okay? So, let's go to the next hand that we actually are going to play. Here, we're against the same player. He raises to $10. Now, normally, in this situation, right, we would be calling. This is not a hand you want to 3-bet at all, right? This is a spot where you can call actually a little bit wider in small stakes games because the players in the blinds are going to not be squeezing all that often, and that allows us to have a slightly wider range. However, in this situation, we should actually start 3-betting this player a ton. A ton, right? All right, so whenever we have this hand that is very likely the best hand against a wide opener, instead of flat calling, as we would normally do, this is actually a very good spot to 3-bet. right? So this is a scenario where we're going to 3-bet instead of calling because we have the best hand. We don't really mind playing a pot in position. If we get 4-bet by someone yet to act, we can just fold, right? But this is a situation where instead of calling, our exploit is to 3-bet this player with a strong linear range. I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a second. Then the way this hand played out is flop comes ace 5-4. He checks. We make a continuation bet. We should be betting small with our entire range here, which we do. Bet 25 bucks. This is great. I didn't play these hands, by the way. One of my students did. He calls. Turn is a 10, which is now we just have the nuts. He checks. And now we want to start betting a little bit bigger because if our opponent has an under pair, he's probably going to fold to any bet. But if he has an ace, he's basically going to call any bet. And if he has a draw, I want to give him poor odds, and I want to set up stacks to get in. So this is a great size. River's 4 clubs, basically a blank. Obviously, he could have a 4. He could have a backdoor flush draw. I mean, he could have pocket 5s, right? But this is a spot where more often than not, he's either going to have an ace, which is, maybe or maybe not going to call any bet, or he's going to have a busted draw that's going to fold to any bet. So this is a situation where we have a pretty easy all-in in my mind. I mean, he could have like ace queen or something, and we just got lucky. But we do jam, and he had ace 7 offsuit. And notice here, if we just called in this scenario pre-flop, we would not have stacked our opponent most likely. We would have won some chips, but we probably would not have stacked him. And paying attention to the previous hand where we realized the guy's raising jack 8 suited a little bit too loose and then calling a 3-bet with jack 8 suited a little bit too loose allows us to exploit this opponent by 3-betting with a different range than we normally would. So let me show you roughly what strategy we want to use in this spot. As you see, we would want to 3-bet normally with this range here on the left, which is a reasonable polarized range against players who are like capable of folding to a 3-bet with our best made hands in red, well, our best hands in red, and then also some hands in blue that are not quite good enough to call the pre-flop raise. However, the exploitative strategy against this player is to instead 3-bet with just all the best hands that stand to dominate a lot of his raising range, right? I mean, you can 3-bet jack 10 suited when the guy's going to call with 8-6 suited, right? So we're 3-betting all the best hands in red and then calling all the hands in blue that line up, okay with his raising range. And again, you can get away with using this blue calling range with no slow plays because the players in the blinds are very rarely going to be squeezing in small stakes games, right? They're just going to call and see a flop, which is great. You want to see the flop. So you see here, these are two very different strategies, right? Very, very different. Interestingly enough, you're actually 3-betting roughly the same percentage. We see 9.2% here, 9.8% here. Our calling range is the same percentage of hands, about 11 to 10, right? So a lot of people look at this and they think, okay, I'm just going to 3-bet 10% of hands without actually thinking what that 10% of hands looks like, right? It's important to recognize that you want to make sure you're actually clearly defining your strategy in these spots. And when you see someone making this mistake of raising too wide, calling 3-bets too wide, you very quickly adjust to this strategy here. And to be fair, this may actually be your default strategy if everyone in your games plays way too loose and way too splashy. And in a lot of 1-3 games, a lot of players will raise with jack 8 suited and call a 3-bet because they just literally never fold. And if that's what they're going to do, you should not be using this strategy over here. Your adjustment right off the bat should be to perhaps assume that the players in your game are very, very bad and that's how they operate. If the villain woken up with a big hand, we're just going to chalk it up to a cooler. Yes. Well, let's go back to this. A lot of the time, if we were in this hand, this is very important to note. When we 3-bet here, if this guy goes all in, or if he makes it $100, we just fold. Because loose, splashy players tend to call a little bit too often. They don't necessarily tend to put in the 4-bet too often. So the reason we can get away with 3-betting with a range like this is because we're planning to fold out the bottom of this range. Like right here, when we 3-bet these hands in blue, we're obviously folding if we get 4-bet, right? A problem a lot of people run into is they 3-bet with these hands in red here, but then they don't fold any of it to a 4-bet, or they only fold like jack 10 to a 4-bet or ace jack to a 4-bet. But you actually do need to fold out a decent chunk of hands here. Perhaps 10s and worse, ace jack suited and worse, ace queen offsuit and worse. And that's okay. Yeah, it is important to realize that we are going to lose sometimes. One thing a lot of people don't like is that they don't like playing big pots because they don't like losing big pots. We have to realize if you have an edge, you want to be pushing that edge. And against someone who raises too wide, calls 3-bets too wide, well, you're in great shape. Should we use exploitative larger 3-bet sizing? Depends on how bad the opponent is, right? In this situation, you don't want to go, well, look, so this is a tough thing to discuss because it depends on what the opponent's tendencies are. And, I only showed one hand. But in this scenario, I don't want to go too big because if you start going too big, the guy is going to, at least at some point, start folding out the ace-7 offsuit. Now, if he's just an extreme calling station, you can make it $50 if he's going to call with ace-7 offsuit. The problem is that a lot of people will not call with ace-7 offsuit when you make it 50, but they'll call literally every time when you make it 32. So I am typically not sizing it up too much until I have a very clear indication of exactly how bad my opponent is. All right, so next, let's observe another hand here. And you all sit here and think about what we actually learned from this hand, okay? And realize, when you're not playing pots, this is actually what you should be doing, which is the opposite of what a lot of people do. They fold their hand and then they start playing on their phone. All right, so here we have raise pre-flop, call, bet kind of big on the flop, call, check, 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 check. Okay? So let's see what they have. All right. In this scenario, what have we learned from this hand? We've learned a ton about both players' strategies. An absolute ton. Take a second, think about it. What did we learn about low jack and what did we learn about high jack? Right? Because, don't just focus on one person. You want to focus on both players. And like in the previous hand, I realized a lot of you were focusing on the 3-better that he must have nothing. But I mean, that doesn't make logical sense because he could just have ace-king, right? Or pocket nines. But we don't know. So we don't actually learn a ton from that because we don't get to see the cards. Here, though, we actually learn a lot. So let's think about this. Let's go back. Remember, low jack has 9-8 of diamonds. Let's look at that from his point of view. Raises 9-8 of diamonds, which is fine. Bets the flop with a presumably polarized range or maybe with everything, which is fine. But now, on this turn, he should definitely continue betting. The best hands to triple barrel are your best hands, for value. And then also the draws that have a lot of equity but completely lack showdown value, which is exactly what he has here, right? 9 high with a flush draw is an amazing hand to continue bluffing, but he doesn't. Goes check, check. Then on the river, when a card that actually makes a jack a whole lot worse comes, this is also a very, very, very easy bluff. But he doesn't bet. So we've learned a lot in this scenario, that this player probably isn't going to be running too many bluffs. Now, again, it's only one hand. You can't say that this player never bluffs ever, obviously. But it's important to recognize that that's probably the case. All right, let's go back to the hijack now. Remember, hijack has king-jack. Calls with king-jack suited pre-flop, which is fine. Flop, he calls a bet, which is fine. Opponent checks turn. I would probably go ahead and bet here, right? This is a spot where I would probably value bet, but he doesn't. Then on the river, it's just like the easiest value bet in the world. And, well, he doesn't. So this player, when he is betting, probably just has like the absolute super nuts, or perhaps it's tilted towards bluffs. So anyway, now let's take a look at a hand we played a little bit later. This is a guy who did not value bet ace-jack, okay? He raises to $10. I think ace-7 offsuit's probably just a fold in a 1-3 game, especially if they have a decently high rake. Again, this is a hand one of my students played, so he's splashing around. Flop comes queen-jack 6, check, check. Okay? Turn is now a 5. Well, going back to what I just stated, with your best made hands and your draws that lack showdown value, you usually want to be bluffing. And, well, here we are. So this is a very, very clear bet in my eyes. Obviously, the opponent could just have a queen. He could just have a jack. But quite often, he's going to have ace high or pocket nines that's going to fold to a turn plus river bet. So this is a great spot to bet kind of big on the turn and then big on the river. So he calls. And now I pick up a little bit of showdown value. But remember, this is the player who presumably didn't think king-jack was all that good just a second ago when he had a pretty strong 2-pair. So do we need to turn this hand into a bluff? It's always an interesting thought and an important consideration because usually you're not trying to turn rivered made hands into a bluff. But I think it's actually highly likely in this spot that the opponent does have a hand like pocket nines or a hand like ace jack. That would make a whole lot of sense. And if this player is a little bit timid, a little bit cautious, we should probably consider a bet. So if we're trying to get this player to fold out a jack or pocket nines or, hey, maybe even a queen, how much should we bet? Take a second, think about it. You all are saying pot, pot, pot. I completely disagree. I think he's probably not going to fold to a pot-sized bet in this situation because it's not actually that big. Some of you are saying you'd never try to bluff the guy off a jack here. Well, remember, this guy is a little bit timid. If we're going to bet here, we want to go for a big bet. Maximally exploitative overbet. Now, the sizing often will depend on your opponent. The neat thing about overbetting is people just don't do it all that often, so you don't actually have a good sample of how your opponent will respond to a bet. So this is a fantastic spot to go for a bet of something like $80, $90, 1.5x, 2x pot. I think that's going to start getting a lot of folds, and that's definitely going to be the case if people are not regularly using overbets in your game. Now, I don't think he's necessarily going to fold a queen, but I think if he has a jack or if he has pocket nines, he's going to fold to a $90 bet like literally every time. And if he's actually very timid, then he may even start folding out a random queen every once in a while. So my student went 65, which I like. I think that's fine, but I probably would have gone just a little bit bigger to really maximize fold equity here. And the guy actually folded queen 10 of hearts face up. Huh. Good. That's exactly what we were going for. I mean, like I said, I don't think people are necessarily always folding a queen to an over pot bet here on the river, but this time it happened, and I'm pretty sure that he would definitely fold out a jack, and players like this would fold out a jack or pocket nines in this scenario pretty much every time. Let's see. He might be a newbie and is afraid of random backdoor straights and backdoor two pairs and all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, who knows what's actually going on through the guy's head, but we do know from his past play that he's probably a little bit too timid, right? So this is a spot where exploitative overbetting is very nice against players who tend to be a little bit too timid. So get him, right? And you need to ask yourselves, I would actually bet that like 98% of people who are in this webinar today would not have made the overbet in this situation. They would have just checked, and it would have gone check, check, and they would have lost. Or check and the opponent bets, and I probably fold. Should the opponent have shown his cards? No, obviously not. You don't want to show your opponents that you play poorly. Last thing you want to do is announce to the table, hey guys, I'm so weak that I don't even call a top pair. Because now you're just going to get bluffed out of your seat every hand. Now, of course, now that we know that, we are going to be maximally exploiting this player by bluffing him out of his seat every time. But this is a situation where if he's actually good, which he's obviously not, but if he was actually good, he should just start becoming an extreme calling station. No one does that, though. This guy's just showing his queen 10 because he's like, haha, I guess you got me. And he's trying to feel good about himself, whereas in reality, he's just clarifying that we played great, right? Would you have folded the 8-7 pre-flop? I think it's close. Well, to be fair, listen, it's very important to realize if your opponents play really poorly post-flop, like we know this guy plays really poorly post-flop, you actually should be defending much wider because your opponents are going to make egregious mistakes after the flop. Without a great reads, I tend to assume my opponents aren't going to be just atrociously bad, but it's clear the hijack is atrociously bad in a weak, tight, passive way, right? So if he is atrociously bad in that manner, we can call it all sorts of stuff and then just win every pot where he doesn't have a good hand. And then you're just printing money by defending in scenarios like this. If you found a table full of these guys, you're quitting engineering and going into poker. Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, this is actually what happens in a lot of small stakes games, right? It's very important to realize that players do play this poorly. All right. So if they're playing poorly, crush them. Get in there and play hands and take advantage of them. All right, here we have a hand against the other player. This is the guy who didn't bluff with the 8-7 a second ago. He raises, we call 6-5 of hearts, which is fine and standard. Check, call, flop. Easy call with middle pair plus backdoor draw. We make 2 pair on the turn when a 3 flush comes. We check, opponent bets 35. We're obviously going to call. There's no point in raising here at this point because once this opponent bets the turn, we should start to get a little bit concerned given his previous tendencies. Now, obviously, he may just have a better flush draw that he thinks is good. Maybe he has something like ace-queen that he thinks is good. But this is a spot where we can pretty easily call again. River's an 8. We check, and now the opponent bets $100. Okay. So against a strong player, this is a very, very, very easy call because very strong players will be value betting with stuff like top pair, which we beat, and they will also be bluffing with hands that can't win at showdown, like king of spades, jack, right? So against a good player, this is about the easiest fold in the world. However, this player probably doesn't have nearly as many bluffs as his range as a good player would, which means he still has hands like ace-queen that we beat, but he's going to be very, very tilted towards value hands. So imagine his worst value bet hand in this scenario is, I don't know, king-queen. If that's the worst hand he's value betting, then we are beating aces, kings, ace-queen, and king-queen. Okay? So we are beating some hands, but we're also losing to, well, all flushes that make logical sense. Ace 2, ace 3, ace 4, ace 7, ace 8, ace 9, ace 10, ace jack, ace king. All the spades, right? We're losing to all those. We're losing to all the sets, right? If he happened to open with the 4-3 suited, we're losing to that, which is unfortunate. So this is a spot where I think we have a pretty easy fold. Someone says, what does an easy fold mean? An easy fold means a fold that you are always making or very clearly making. So like I said, this is a very easy call against a good player because they're going to have a lot of ace high and king high busted spades. This player is probably not going to be making that play. You're blocking sets heavily. Realize, Warlock, that doesn't matter all that much if your opponent doesn't bluff all that much. There's this idea of counting combinations and whatnot that is very, very relevant, right? But at the same time, first off, realize our opponent's always betting every flush, right? So he has 100% of flushes. And then you weight down all of the other hands until you get down to 0, right? Like the guy, for all I know, maybe betting queen 9 suited, right? I don't know, 2% of the time. Maybe he's betting queen 10 suited 3% of the time. Maybe he's betting king queen, a hand that I said he's, quote unquote value betting. Maybe he's only betting that 50% of the time. Maybe he's betting ace queen 55% of the time. I don't know. But I can tell you he's always betting the ace high flush 100%, right? He's always betting the king high flush 100%, maybe 99.9%, right? So it's important to realize that you can't just straight count combinations based on how you think the opponent is going to play. A lot of people don't like this idea because they want to know definitively what we should do, right? They want to think, oh, this is what I always do in this spot because he has 36 combinations that we beat and whatever, 24 that we lose to, so it's an easy call. The problem is he has those 24 that we lose to 100% of the time, and he has those that we beat less often. But we don't know how much less often. But knowing this guy is going to have fewer bluffs than most people, and knowing that, at least having an idea they may not value bet so thin, I think this becomes a pretty easy fold against players who have shown a tendency of not being willing to bluff. But obviously against a good player, we beat all of his hands like aces, and we also beat the bluffs, making this, that are going to be in his range because he's good, making this a much easier call. How often do they bluff in small stakes? It depends on your opponents, right? It definitely depends on your opponents. If they are loose, aggressive, maniacal, they're bluffing a ton. If they're nits, they're bluffing never. This guy probably isn't bluffing a whole lot. Now, we don't know for sure. And to be fair, if I saw exactly that one hand from the opponent, what I call here, it's close, right? Because against a good player, this is just the easiest call in the world. But against someone who has shown me they won't bluff with a very obvious bluffing hand, I mean, it's already becoming pretty dicey. If I've seen that previous hand, let me go back and pull it up. Remember, he had 9-8 of diamonds here. If I've seen this previous hand or something like this happen multiple times where he just checks it down with a 9 high, then I'm definitely folding here. Like, super easy fold. If I've seen him also not value bet with a hand like top pair ever, then I'm definitely folding. Definitely folding. Because then his range is like flushes and sets. And, well, how do we fare against flushes and sets? We lose, right? So realize that is very important. Even if we have like the ace of spades there, it's important to realize that even if we block those hands, our opponent still has plenty of other hands that they could be playing this way. And if they're not value betting worse and they're not bluffing, we just lose. Couldn't he just be overplaying aces, kings, ace, queen, and king, queen? Thomas, did you just get here? We literally just went through that. I'm not going to go through it again. Go back and watch the recording of this. We are 25 minutes in, so go back to 20 minutes in, and I will go through a whole spiel of about why it is relevant that he could have those, but we should be discounting those combinations. So, those were the 3 key exploitative plays that you need to understand to crush the small stakes games. And those are plays that are going to come up very, very regularly. So number 1, you need to be adjusting your 3-betting strategy, right? Against players who are going to call too often, and there are a lot of them in the small stakes games, you want to be 3-betting with a linear range instead of a polarized range. You want to use polarized ranges typically against good players, and more often when you're out of position. You want to be using linear ranges. Did I say that backwards? You want to be using polarized ranges when you are in position and against good players. You want to be using linear ranges when you're against calling stations and typically when you're out of position. Okay. You want to be using overbets against people who have capped ranges. A capped range is a range that is probably something like top pair or worse. And if it's top pair or worse, you're not necessarily trying to get a top pair type hand to fold, right? But you're trying to get all the worse stuff to fold, right? And then you want to overfold against players who don't bluff the river often enough, even in spots where they could have some, overvalued hands. But in general, you are going to want to overfold to people who play honestly, and you're going to find that there are plenty of players in the small stakes games who play honestly. What is a polarized range or a linear range? This is a polarized range right here. You see standard polarized strategy. Polar means you have the best or the worst, like the North Pole and the South Pole, right? So we have the best hands here, all the nuts, and we have the hands that are not quite good enough to call in blue, also getting 3-bet here. A linear range is just like a line. You start at the top and you work your way down until you find hands that aren't good enough to 3-bet. That is what a linear strategy is. This is all discussed thoroughly over at pokercoaching.com. So I just went through these 3 exploits. I hope you all can implement them into your game. And, well, since Valentine's Day is coming up, I have a few special things to talk to you all about. And if that's cool, stick around. So first things first, we are having a Valentine's Day giveaway. You can check that out right now at pokercoaching.com/giveaway, where we are giving away 6 books by D&B Poker, including 4 of mine, and then also Modern Poker Theory and the newest book by Alex Fitzgerald, my poker coaching coaches. We're giving away those 6 books to you and a friend, whoever you want us to send them to, plus a year of my training site, Poker Coaching Premium. There's also 2nd and 3rd place prizes, and just for signing up, you'll get one of my free ebooks. And, we're always emailing out additional tools, resources that are free for all of you. So make sure you get in on that. And we're also having a Valentine's Day sale. In the Valentine's Day sale, we are putting many of my best training resources on sale for you so that you can get them at a fraction of a cost that you normally would. So, as we see here, we have these cash game resources, how to beat wild games. I know a lot of you say you're playing in games where your opponents are lunatics. Well, there it is. That's for you. We also have a webinar on beating the loose cash games. We have webinars on beating the higher stakes cash games. And all of these, we normally sell for $100, but today, and up until February 16th, only $20. And I just released a new cash game series just about last week where I go and I play online against relatively tough opponents. I'm playing the medium stakes online fast forward games on Party Poker. And then I also play some of the slower games to show you the differences in the difficulty of fast forward versus normal. And I'm showing you how to beat those games. I had great results and it was good. Basically, I just played better GTO poker than everyone else did. And it turns out it works out. Shannon says the wild cash game course is amazing. Good, I'm glad to hear it. To use the chat. Yes, you're using the chat. When did you miss out the Valentine's Day winners? No, it's not Valentine's Day yet. That giveaway is still going on. Check it out at pokercoaching.com/giveaway. Next, I just updated my cash game masterclass. Now, there are 29 lessons in there, and all of them include quizzes. I know you all enjoy the quizzes, so to make sure that you are really understanding all of the fundamentals discussed in my Cash Game Masterclass, we have quizzes to help you learn how to apply the things that I am teaching there. We've had many students since I released the Cash Game Masterclass about 6 months ago tell me that they went from breaking even at $1, $2 to now they've quintupled their bankroll and now they're playing 2-5 no limit and they're winning $50 an hour. So we've had many students, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, 4 or 5 who have emailed me over just the last week, tell me that they are now achieving the results they want and they are actually making that $100,000 a year by grinding it out. Warlock says the Cash Game Masterclass is 100% worth seeing. It's really good. Well, good. That's exactly what we're going for. All right. So we have more resources than just Cash Game resources, of course. We also have resources on tournaments where I review the $1 million buy-in Triton event where a lot of the best players in the world were battling. I'm always reviewing the best players in the world to try to learn from them. Also, we have reviews where I'm reviewing the Montreal Masterclass, where I reviewed the hands that I played in a World Poker Tour event in Montreal, where I think I took 8th place, something like that. I have a bigger 109 that I won, took 1st place in that. And we have many, many other courses there. Also, we have 2 courses that you all have loved where I have coached other students extensively. One of them was the 25K Platinum Coaching Session, where I coached Nickel for the 25K Poker Stars Players Championship. He did not win, but he, I think, 2.5x'd up on day 1, was coasting along on day 2, got it all in with a flip and lost. So, I mean, in theory, he turned $25,000 into about $60,000, but then lost the flip. Such is life. And also, I get poker coaching member Blas Zerjau, who turned, $5 into 1.1 million. Was 1.1 million? 1.6 million? I get confused. He basically took 3rd place in a giant party poker tournament after spinning it up. I coached him in preparation for the World Series. He had an okay World Series, nothing great, but just the other day, he won another online tournament for $250,000 on Winamax. So he is still in there, grinding it out, using proper bankroll management, being smart about life, and he is absolutely crushing it. Now let me tell you about my membership site, pokercoaching.com, that also has Poker Coaching Premium. Here's my coaches. I'll go through them very briefly. We have Jonathan Little. This is me. You all know a bit about me. I play poker sometimes. Here we have Matt Affleck. You all may know him from the World Series of Poker coverage. He got super bad beat and cried on TV. Matt is a great guy, though. He works very hard in his game. He studies hard, and he has study sessions with all of the Poker Coaching Premium members. I think he does 4 webinars a week for us, and also he has lots and lots of quizzes. He is a fantastic coach, and I have learned a lot from his content. We have Alex Fitzgerald, who has coached probably more people than anyone else in the world, and he's a very, very strong online player. We have Evan Jarvis, who, his name's Grips. He's a holistic guy who's also very good at poker. Next, we have some of the more recent hires I have. We have Jonathan Jaffe. Jonathan Jaffe is my favorite poker player. It's not even close. He is an incredibly maximally exploitative player who's also just a super genius. He's one of the biggest winners in online heads-up sit-and-goes, and since those have dried up, he's been absolutely crushing high-stakes live tournaments. I mean, just the other day, he won a $25,000 tournament in Florida. In December, he took, I think it was 6th place at the WPT at Bellagio. So anyway, he is in there grinding it out. He doesn't even play a lot, and he just wins all the money. We have Michael Acevedo. He wrote Modern Poker Theory. He is the GTO expert for the poker backing site Pokar, and he might be the player who I have learned the most from over the last few years. I have watched all of his content that's behind a private server for the backies of the Pokar backing company. And I mean, I've learned a ton. I went from not really fully understanding why I'm making the plays I'm making to understanding them. And when you understand which plays you need to make and why, you'll play a million times better. Next, we have Lexy Gavin. Lexy is a high-stakes cash game crusher who's also been playing tournaments a little bit more recently. She actually just won a tournament the other day. She's a Run Good pro. They're a clothing apparel tournament series company. She won one of their tournaments and then I think took 4th place in the one right after it. So she is crushing it too. Then we have Tristan Wade, who has lots and lots of content to help get you up to date on the fundamentals. So make sure you check that out. And then we just hired Faraz Jaka. Faraz Jaka is, kind of like Jonathan Jaffe in that he plays a lot of hands and he absolutely crushes his opponents. He doesn't play a ton either, but he has $10 million in cashes live and online, and you never want Faraz Jaka at your table. It's actually interesting because he's in there playing a ton of hands in a very out-of-the-box way, and you'd think this guy's not going to be too hard to beat because he's playing lots of hands, but at the end, he just ends up winning all your money every time. You're like, huh, what just happened? And you do not want Faraz at your table, and Faraz has had private students for a long time, same thing with Jonathan Jaffe, but they've never really done any sort of mass group coaching like they're doing for me at pokercoaching.com. So make sure you check out their content. Warlock says, as someone who's been busted out of a WPT by Faraz, you do not want him at your table. Yes, I completely agree. Matt says he would have cried too for Matt Affleck's bad beat. I don't remember the exact bad beat, but it was a pretty bad one for something like, I don't even know, $1 million in equity. When you get bad beat for $1 million in equity, turns out you're usually kind of devastated. It was his pocket aces against pocket jacks. Yeah, well, you're going to lose. His opponent rivered straight. Yeah. Fun game, huh? So let me show you a little bit what we have in poker coaching. Here we have quizzes. We have interactive quizzes, kind of like the hand history I just showed you, where I present a scenario to you. We start pre-flop and go all the way till the hand's over. And you have to tell me which play you would make. And you have to do that on every street, and we give you scores, right? So after you've gone through a lot of them, your dashboard will look something like this, where you will have scores for every single quiz. You'll start to see spots where you're making mistakes, right? Like right here, we see a river mistake. Here you see a kind of bad play on the river. Here we see a kind of bad play on the flop, right? And if you start to see you're just like really butchering the river, well, you know you need to be studying the river more. If you see that you mess up every pre-flop spot, you need to be studying pre-flop more. And that is very, very beneficial and instructional if you go through and actually put in the time and you do the quizzes. Next, we have over 40 challenge webinars where I ask you not just how you would play this specific hand, but how you would play your entire range. I actually have a webinar coming up. I think it's next week where I'm going through a fun spot. And I show how I would play these scenarios. I show the GTO strategy. We've been doing that recently because some of you suggested that. And I show how you should be playing these hands from pre-flop all the way to the river, from an implementable manner all the way to the river, and then also from a GTO manner. It's very important to realize we are not GTO robots. So many people think, oh, I'm just going to use the GTO strategy and crush. Yeah, well, I hate to break it to you, but we're not robots. We are mere humans, and we have to learn how to play in a manner that is repeatable and implementable. And that is exactly what I've designed for all of you in pokercoaching.com. So we also have over 45 coaching webinars by our coaches. These are essentially one-ish hour classes on specific topics presented by the coaches. We have over 45 of these, and we're adding more all the time, right? So in poker coaching, you can get a 1, 2, or 3-year membership. We add new content every single month. We have over 650 quizzes. All of this content here. We add new quizzes every month, new video classes, new challenges, new live webinars, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We also have backing in a private Discord channel. Every month we will put a few people into live poker tournaments, usually $500 to $1,000 buy-in, something like that. And that's because I want to give all of my students an opportunity to show their skills. Look at my formatting messed up. That's not good. Should probably fix that, huh? So anyway, normally, poker coaching, if you pay $40 a month, is $468 a year, but you can get 1 year for $149, 2 years at a discount, $249, or 3 years for $299. If you pay for the 3-year membership, you're paying $8.31 a month, which is, 30 cents a day, 40 cents a day? Listen, in terms of things you can get that are of value, 40 cents a day for content from many of the best players in the world is an absolute value. I made poker coaching to be the training site that I wish I had whenever I was learning poker. 28 cents a day, Matthew says. Yeah, that's a value. And you're actually going to find that educational content about anything at all, is one of the biggest values that you can get. Next, we have Poker Coaching Premium. This is for players who really want to take time devoting themselves to the game. This is not for everyone. This is for players who actually want to win life-changing money from poker. I realize a lot of people want to, play an hour a week and goof off with their friends. Poker Coaching Premium is not for them. There we have tons of quizzes, over 730. Over the next year, we're going to be adding over 300 new quizzes, over 24 new video classes. and much, much, much more. I made Poker Coaching Premium to be the training site that I want today. Remember I said we had these new coaches. I specifically hired Jonathan Jaffe, Michael Acevedo, and Faraz Jaka because these are players who always give me fits from very different points of view. Faraz and Jonathan Jaffe, they both play maximally exploitative poker, but interestingly enough, they think about it in very different ways, which is important. You need to know how the players are thinking. And then Michael Acevedo is like the GTO robot. He's also someone who doesn't play a ton, but has devoted his life to solving poker. He has the entire game of No Limit Hold'em, not perfectly solved, but very close to solved. And I've watched many videos of him just playing. He's like, yeah, I'm just not going to play with a HUD or anything. I'm not going to pay attention. I'm just going to play 20 tables, and I'm going to play as close to GTO as I can. Turns out he like wins a tournament every day when he does that, because turns out playing really good GTO poker is great when you're playing online and when you're playing against tough opponents. So anyway, I hired these three coaches very specifically to coach me. And I hired Matt Affleck a while back very specifically to coach me. And they're making content in Poker Coaching Premium that is groundbreaking. So normally Poker Coaching Premium is $99 a month, but for the Valentine's Day sale, you can get a year of it for $649, which is about half off. And again, it's an absolute value. If you really want to crush the game, I suggest you do spend time studying. I mean, I've spent, goodness, I think something like $25,000 at this point on private coaching, and it's been well worth it. And I realize everybody doesn't have $25,000 to spend on private coaching, but if you're playing even like $100 tournaments 2 or 3 times a week, in reality, you can afford $100 a month on getting better at poker. And if you go from, let's say, losing $20 every time you play to winning $20 every time you play, well, think about that. That's a $120 swing if you play 3 times a week. So $120 times 4 weeks is what? $480 you will win every month compared to where you were if you just start studying and improve your skills. And that's even if you're playing tiny stakes, right? Think about if you're playing high stakes. If you're playing high stakes, and it's just like a no-brainer. And to be fair, full disclosure, I own memberships to many of the training sites out there because I want to make sure I'm learning from everyone and up to speed on what is going on in the poker world. And I'm taking all of these ideas and concepts and giving them to you in a way that is very implementable. And I've also hired the coaches I want to learn from to coach me and in turn to coach you. So those are the 2 sales we have available for you. You can check it out at pokercoaching.com/Valentine sale. You can get poker coaching membership 1, 2, or 3 years. As you see, the price is right there. Or, like I said, if you really want to up your game and take your game to the next level, you can get Poker Coaching Premium, an annual membership for $649. We actually just did a challenge. I've seen many of you saying that you completed the challenge. Congrats on that. That is excellent. Granville says the 30-day challenge was absolutely amazing. We'd recommend all new students start with that. Yeah, so we're actually coming out with many more challenges. I know that some of you said that you liked the challenge so much you wanted more. So we're making them. We already have, I believe, 4 more in the works that should be available very, very soon. Basically, every day, we send you an email with something to do on the website that in a very linear way, a very organized way that will help you better your skills. And I realize we have a lot of content on the site at this point, right? To the point that it's may be overwhelming for some. And so I want to try to figure out a way to give you something like a 20-minute or 30-minute task every day to do for the last 30 days. And I think something like 500 of you got through it, which is excellent. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. We're trying to help all of you change your lives. Like imagine you just spend even 10 minutes a day studying poker. Well, every month, what is that? What is 10 times 30? It's 300 hours of poker study. And if you do that for a year, can't even do the math. What's 300 times 12? 36? Is that right? I don't even know. It's a lot of study. It's way more study than the majority of your opponents are doing. And if you study and work harder than your opponents, and you are actively in there learning, then you will absolutely crush your opponents. You'll move up in stakes, and you will significantly better your life, because when you start making $100,000 a year or more from poker because you have a substantial edge on your opponents, well, that's when good things really start happening across the board. Now, obviously, there's no guarantee you're going to start winning tons and tons of money, but if you work harder than your opponents, you're going to be a favorite to do so. And if you ever have any questions or comments, you can always just message me on Twitter at Jonathan Little, and I will do it. Fader Holt says, get 1% better every day. Yeah, we actually have some content from Fader. We have 2 classes in poker coaching from Fader Holt. I try to work with lots of people. It's important to collaborate. I was on the Jeff Gross podcast just the other day, and we're talking about collaborating with him too. I mean, we're trying to work with people who want to help other people get better. Christine said, you love this month homework. Well, good, we'll get there. If you have any questions about pricing, like if you're already a poker coaching member and you want to upgrade to premium or anything like that, send an email to support@pokercoaching.com and we will get it. Just in case you missed it, you have the Cash Game Masterclass. Will it be automatically updated? It should be updated already, Mike. If it's not, send us an email to support@pokercoaching.com. If you all have any questions about the website, memberships, pricing, whatever, just send us an email, support@pokercoaching.com, and we will do it. Aren't any 2 cards good bluff hands? No. Typically, you want to be bluffing with your best made hands and your draws. Oh, I guess I didn't mention this. Is the Cash Game Masterclass included in pokercoaching.com? Yes. Every single thing I mentioned here. All these classes. Let's go through them again. We had these cash game courses, the new Crushing Tough Cash Games, the Cash Game Masterclass, all of these courses. These courses where I go through teaching my private students how to crush the games, and much, much more. All of that is included in Poker Coaching Premium for sure, and some of that is in Poker Coaching. Poker Coaching Premium is all access to everything. The Cash Game Masterclass is part of Poker Coaching Premium. Your win rate has consistently increased over the years from using my materials. Well, that's exactly what we're going for, right? So yes, all of this is included in Poker Coaching Premium, and some of it is included in the regular Poker Coaching membership here. We can see the differences. Poker Coaching Premium, for example, has 730 quiz, 130 classes, right? Whereas Poker Coaching has 650, 20, you see, a little bit less, right? Because I wanted to figure out a way, basically, look, when you have all these coaches who are all high-level crushers, the content's not cheap, okay? I have to spend a lot of money getting these people to make content. I'm looking at the bills I have to pay now every month. It's like, oh my God. But I'm happy to do it for all of you. And well, I don't want to be out of pocket too much. So we have to charge a little bit more. All right, let's see. So you have a few questions from the beginning of this webinar that I did not address because they were completely off topic. What are some best cities to grind 2-5? What is this? What are the best cities to grind some 2-5 and 5-10 no limit? Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Fort Lauderdale, any place where there's a new casino. All of that is those are very, very good places to play. You're on a 2,000 big blind downswing. The only game you can move down to and play is 1-2 with a $100 max. Should you go to that tiny game or just try to ride it out at 1-3? Well, Corey left apparently. Realize that if you're losing, first off, 2,000 big blinds is some, but not actually a lot. It's 20 buy-ins, right? It's kind of a lot. It's at 1-3. And it kind of implies you're not actually a winning player. I would tell you to go through and study the materials substantially more. Make sure you're playing in games where you can beat the rake. That is very important. And that's that. Go back and actually watch the episode of A Little Coffee I did this morning. You can find it at youtube.com/pokercoaching. That's a situation where if you're losing consistently, it's probably because you're not all that good. I mean, I hate to break it to you, but that's probably the answer. And if you're not all that good, you need to make sure you're studying the right things. How do you not come off as a complete nit at 1-2 and 1-3 when the standard opening raise is 5 big blinds and the max buy-in is 100 big blinds? Well, you should be a nit. If your opponents are raising huge, then you just can sit there and be tight because they're risking way too much to win too little. You play very timid poker. How do you change that mindset? Well, CJ, you have to learn to play well. If you learn to play well, you will get over it. I mean, for example, I'm actually kind of nitty by nature too. Someone asked me this morning at A Little Coffee, how do they get over their natural bluffing tendencies? Realize that what you like, what you have emotional attachment to, none of that matters in a game that is rooted in math. For example, my dad. My dad's kind of timid like I was naturally. A long time ago he was playing, and he would never go all in with something like a 25 big blind stack over a raise. He always thought he'd get called. And then I told him, like, one day, Dad, you just have to do it. Try it. See what happens. He started going all in with like Jack 10 offsuit over raises, and everybody would fold. And he did this over and over, and they would all fold. One time he went all in with pocket nines and got called by ace jack and won. And then he won the poker tournament. Very first time he started doing what I told him to do. And you just need to learn to play well. Every time you make a play that is not the right play, you lose money. And I don't want you all to lose money. I do not want you all to lose money. I want you to crush it. Where can you contact me for lessons? Support@pokercoaching.com. How much do I charge for private lessons? I don't do a ton of private lessons because I would much rather help lots of you at a time. I mean, we have hundreds of people here right now. I'd much rather help hundreds of people than one. But I do charge $500 an hour for private coaching if I feel like coaching you. Where would you start if you went to pokercoaching.com? I would tell you to sign up for Poker Coaching Premium and go through the Cash Game Masterclass. That is very, very important for anyone, not just cash game players, because it teaches you how to play good, fundamentally sound, deep stacked poker. The nits play well against lags. As long as they don't fold too often. You were a break-even player until you joined Poker Coaching Premium. You don't even remember your last losing session, says Corey. Well, that's great. Glad to hear it. In terms of tangible practice, do you recommend Ignition? You go to the casino to play 1-3, but you're looking for an alternative. I mean, look, if you're playing online poker, I suggest that you, what should you do? Put a small amount of money in one of the sites. I suppose Ignition/Bovada is the best one of all the bad ones available in America. Do not keep any significant money available or online in any of the sites based in America because they're liable to close at any point. So be careful. When will you be in the LA area? No clue. No time soon. Is it worth investing into PioSolver? I would generally tell you no, unless you're already playing high stakes and crushing the game and you have a lot of time to study. It's actually why I like Michael Acevedo's content so much, because he has went through and solved every spot. And if you have a question about any spot, he's like, oh yeah, give me a second, I'll pull up that. And he'll show you the answer. It's insane. So that's that. When will you be in Vegas? I mean, look, I don't do live in-person coaching, if that's what you're asking for. Because whenever I'm traveling, I do not have time for that. My goal whenever I'm traveling is not to do live in-person coaching. It is to maximize my time getting well rested and playing the poker tournament series. I'll be in Vegas for 2 days, though, or 3 days, though, for the Global Poker Index Awards and for a company retreat for me and my employees. You just finished the 30-day challenge and did not do so well on the final exam quiz. What should you do? Go back and re-study. Go through it all again. At a 1-3 table, you play 5-10 offsuit suited from a friendly guy raised. Eventually went all in, 2 pair, etc., etc. Maniacs, all session. And they were winning. Well, realize that happens. Sometimes you're going to lose. Whenever the Maniacs play the 10-5 offsuit and get it all in pre-flop, and they drill the 10 and the 5, yeah, you lose. Get over it. You're going to have variance. Variance exists. Make sure you're properly bankrolled. If several people dropped off of... let's see. Andy, I like that idea. It's a good idea. All right. With non-tricky limpers in a 1-2 cash game, what is your limping range and late position if we're supposed to have a limping range? You just feel like limping is weak. Well, again, Gabriel, the idea of limping is weak doesn't really matter. What matters is it actually weak, and it's not. Limping is fine as long as they're not raking a ton. I mean, like I know in a lot of 1-2 games across the country, they'll rake $7 if you see the flop across the board. If there's 4 limpers and you put in a call and the blinds call, there's $15 in the pot and they rake half of it away, yeah, you shouldn't have a limping range. But if you if the rake's not giant, it's fine to limp, especially with hands that flop decently well, like suited connectors, small pairs, medium pairs. Those are all great to limp with. We actually discussed this thoroughly in the Cash Game Masterclass at Poker Coaching Premium. Again, if anyone has any questions about anything pertaining to pricing, send an email to support@pokercoaching.com. Let's see, I have trouble understanding what I mean by how many bluffs do you have? Isn't it any potential hand can be a bluff? No, because Greg, for example, Jonathan Little, me, is literally never, ever, 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 ever raising from under the gun with 7-2 offsuit. I'm not raising 7-2 offsuit. It's impossible for me to have 7-2 offsuit or 7-2 suited or 9-5 suited or 9-4 suited or Jack-3 suited. All of these hands, it is literally impossible for me to have when I raise from an early position. I will never do it. So that means I can't have those hands, right? And there are many situations where you just don't have some hands if you're playing anywhere near competently. And when you're playing against people who are competent, you know they just don't have it. Even against maniacs, they're not raising the Jack-3 offsuit every single time, so it's weighted. I mean, yeah, they could have it, but very often they don't. While you were still learning, did you still play? Oh, yes. I suggest you always play at least some, because playing some will help you implement the things that you are trying to, or it'll help you implement the things you're actively working to learn. Matthew says, you're having problems counting combinations. There's a class in Poker Coaching Premium on counting combinations by Matt Affleck, so check that out. Matthew says you're playing against a guy who's 3-betting a lot. Turns out you 4-bet him one time and he had aces. Yeah, well, that happens. Even maniacs get aces. That's actually what I was talking about in one of the hands today, where I said that your opponent's always value betting with the nut flushes, but they're not always value betting with the marginal made hands. And they're not always going to be bluffing with every single possible bluff, but that's up to you to figure out how often they actually are bluffing. Will you learn faster or slower playing Zoom? Zoom will teach you to play will teach you to play GTO poker, whereas the non-Zoom games will teach you to play more exploitative poker. You have trouble understanding how many hands will beat you quickly. Again, check out that class by Matt Affleck on counting combinations. It's very important. Which 2 items will help you beat opponents who play very wild and small stakes games? Well, right here. Here we go. Let's find them. Wild games. How to beat wild games. Literally the title of the course. And then also beating loose live cash games. These 2 right here are exactly what you need. And they're on sale. How lucky. And they're all part of Poker Coaching Premium, so check that out. If you miss a webinar, will it get added to Poker Coaching? All of the stuff I make is recorded and put online somewhere. For the hand history, how do you remember all the cards, pot bets, etc. for live games? Do you take notes? Yes. Read jonathanlittlepoker.com/notes. You played a $400 tournament. How do you deal with players who seem to play all sorts of garbage? Well, just play better cards than them. If your opponents are so bad to the point that they don't play good hands at all, just play better hands than them and you're going to win on average. That's all you really have to do. Can you determine what it looks like if you're playing against a bot? I mean, I am not playing on these sites that are known to have lots of bots because I don't feel like dealing with that. Like I said, many of the sites that operate in America, they just don't care about that. And that's a problem. It's a problem with American poker sites. And, you know, sites like Party Poker and PokerStars, they've done a great job of shutting them all down. So I'm not the least bit worried about that. Also, I play pretty good poker, and turns out the poker bots are not all that great yet. So I don't really worry about that. I mean, look, whenever you're playing on good, reputable sites, you don't really have to worry so much about collusion, about bots, about cheating, et cetera, et cetera. When you're playing on shady sites, like you're playing on a random poker app on your phone, well, you better be well aware of it, because there have been many cases where people had access to cards or people had, you know, whatever. There's a lot of bad things that can happen. That's beyond the scope of this talk, clearly. Play in reputable venues and you will not have problems. I've literally never had a problem playing in a reputable venue. But hey, if you're willing to gamble and play in shady places, then don't be surprised if something shady happens. Wouldn't playing GTO profit at Zoom? Sure. Yeah. Playing GTO will profit or break even in most games. Are the full ring charts for games with an ante? I'm not exactly sure. Read the description. I'm not sure which ones you're referring to off the top of my head. Will these plays work in wild games? Yes, I mean, that's exactly what we were talking about today, right? Maximally exploiting your opponents. You started playing chess and it has made you better at poker. Do you think about cross-training in other games? Not really. I think that if your goal is to get good at poker, I suggest you study specifically poker and get very good at poker, right? I mean, like, I'm still studying No Limit Hold'em, and I know more about No Limit Hold'em than almost everyone, and I still don't know enough, right? So yes, there is merit in playing other games, but realize there's an opportunity cost to everything you do. This is why I don't play some of the games I enjoy playing nearly as much, because I'd rather be either hanging out with my family or I'd rather be working on poker, studying poker, making content for all of you to help you get better at poker. You just finished the 30-day challenge. It was great to study every day and got you into the habit of doing quizzes and range analysis. That is exactly what I want to hear, Michael. I'm very, very happy to hear that. Is there a book recommendation other than Mastering Small Stakes No Limit Hold'em? If you've been through that, check out Michael Acevedo's book, Modern Poker Theory. Check out Excelling at No Limit Hold'em. What do you think of the content regarding tells? We have some content by Zach Elwood. Zach Elwood has 3 books on tells. He wrote a chapter in that Excelling at No Limit Hold'em book I mentioned. And he has, I believe, 2 webinars in Poker Coaching Premium on tells. So check that out. That is a very good starting point. It's already included in the Poker Coaching Premium membership. So there you go. Where do you find the 30-day challenge? It actually just ended. We're going to figure out a way to get it into the dashboard in the near future. But if you've not taken the 30-day challenge and you're a Poker Coaching Premium member, send us an email and we'll get it to you. Can playing small stakes damage your poker game? No, you just have to understand that you need to be playing to beat the players you're playing against at all times. Playing smaller stakes games will just let you play in games that are more profitable in terms of big blinds per hour. You have a game with a relatively low rake, $10 when you go in, $5 every 30 minutes with no rake. Yeah, that's fine. That's certainly acceptable rake. All right. That's all your questions. I got through all of them. Thank you all for sending me all those questions. I appreciate it. Remember, if you want to sign up for poker coaching or poker coaching premium or get any of those very specific courses that will help you fix whatever problems you have in your game, check out pokercoaching.com/Valentine's sale. Look, I work very, very hard for all of you to help you become the best poker players you can be. If you want to crush the games, if you want to better your life, if you want to, give it a shot to become a professional poker player, you have to start by studying and getting good at the game, right? And I have developed many resources to help you do that. And Poker Coaching Premium, that we have pulled up here, I designed it to essentially be an encyclopedia of everything you could possibly want to know about poker. I have something like 80 classes there where I answer specific questions that my students asked me. And if you're a Poker Coaching Premium member, send me an email. If there's a topic that you want me to discuss and it is not already in a video on Poker Coaching Premium, you can be pretty sure I'll make it over the next few months. I want to do everything I can to answer your questions, and that's what Poker Coaching Premium is. It helps you find your flaws and then fix the flaws in your game so that you play great. Which membership do I recommend for micro stakes players? That's more a question of how much are you willing to devote, how much time and how much effort are you willing to devote to getting good at poker? I mean, look, I realize $649 for a year for Poker Coaching Premium may sound a little bit expensive, but it's only what, $60 a month? $60 a month is $2 a day. Is getting good at poker not worth $2 a day? I mean, like, come on, right? $2 a day is essentially free. It's very close to free. And I can already tell you, if you actively work hard, you're gonna make way more than $650 a year if you actually devote your time to it. If you sign up and you don't ever use it, well then yeah, it's not worth anything, right? But if you do spend an hour a day studying, yeah, it's worth way more than $2 an hour. I mean, I told you all earlier, I'm spending, whenever I hire my private coaches who teach me, I'm paying them $300 an hour, $500 an hour, and it's well worth it. This is $2 an hour. And these are all things that my other students have already asked me. So they're common spots where we are helping people like you improve. How many hours of time would you recommend studying away from the table a week? It depends. Depends on what your goals are, right? Depends on how much time you have to devote for it. The answer is clearly maximum, right? Especially if you're not already winning at poker, then you definitely want to be studying a ton. If you're already crushing it, well, then you probably don't need to study quite as much because you already have a good win rate, right? If you're bad, you need to be studying a lot. If you're good, you can get away with studying less, right? So anyway, that's gonna be it for today. Thank you very much for being here. Also remember to check out the giveaway at pokercoaching.com/giveaway, where we're giving away 6 of my physical D&B books to you and one of your friends. Plus, you can win a year of Poker Coaching Premium, so check that out. Good luck in your games. Have fun. Thank you very much for being here. And again, if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section. Let me know on Twitter at Jonathan Little. If you have any pricing questions or whatever, any questions at all, if you just want to vent to someone about a problem in life, if you want to tell me thank you for the work I've done, whatever you want to do, send me an email, support@pokercoaching.com. I see every single email that comes through. I do have a team that helps me, but I actually read every single email that comes through, and I appreciate all of the feedback. That helps me help you better. So thanks a lot. If you're watching this on YouTube later, click like, click subscribe. That goes a long way to helping the YouTube algorithm help other people find me. And that's going to be it for today. Good luck in your games, and I will talk to you all next time.